see in the Muslim world, this anti-Semitism, because, there's no lack of Muslim countries, but there are a lack of successful Muslim countries. And there's this tiny Jewish state of 8 or 9 million people doing so much better than its neighbors. That holds up a mirror to your failings if you're a Jordanian or an Egyptian.
And it's interesting when we're talking about anti-Semitism, there's one type of anti-Semitism that you touch on in the book, which is anti-Semitism within Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a very interesting quote in it from Mehdi Hassan.
Oh, yes.
Your great hero.
Yeah.
Dear friend. One of my closest enemies. And yes, that's right. Mehdi Hassan accidentally some years ago said something true. And I quote it in the book, which he wrote an article for New Statesman in, I think, 2013 or so. There was a Labour peer called Lord Ahmed who was texting whilst he was driving on the motorway, and he ran over and killed a Polish gentleman and went to prison for it, and interviewed on Pakistani television after being released from prison, said that the reason why he'd gone to prison was as the Jews. Now, you and I might ask, were the Jews making you text? Did the Jews push the Polish gentleman in front of your car as you were text driving? We have no explanation for this from Lord Ahmed. But the fact he did that made that claim, and when it became public in Britain, it caught a certain amount of attention. Mehdi Hassan wrote a column in the New Statesman at the time saying something true, as I say, it must have been wrung out of him. He said, every Muslim reading this will know what I'm talking about when I say that it's our dirty little secret. He said the anti-Semitism in the Muslim community in Britain, he said, is, quote, rife and commonplace. Rife and commonplace. He said, every Muslim reading this will know what I mean. Every dinner table, there'll be something about the Jews not being in the Twin Towers on 9/11. There'll be something about the Jews killing Princess Diana, and so on and so forth. I believe him. And I believe that, and I know because I've traveled in enough of the Muslim world to see the rife anti-Semitism that exists in Muslim countries, and the rife anti-Semitism that exists in Muslim communities in the West. And I think it's a major, major problem. And I think that many Jews don't want to face up to that. Many non-Jews don't want to face up to that. Hardly any Muslims want to face up to that. And even old Mehdi never repeated that point. And, but it's manifestly true. And it goes back to that thing of where anti-Semitism can come from. That the reason why the protests against Israel from the 7th of October onwards in the West have been led by Muslims, that the political attacks on Israel have been led by Muslims in the rest of the West, is because whether it's the former First Minister of Scotland or a Muslim minister in Australia, they cannot bear the Jews defending themselves. They cannot bear it because of this issue of the self-esteem of Islam, the self-esteem of Muslims. You just notice it. Just for God's sake, let's be honest about it. A million Uyghur Muslims are put into camps in China, and has the centre of London been ground to a halt week after week by Muslims and others about this? No. More Muslims were killed in the Syrian civil war since 2011. More Muslims were killed every year of the last decade in Assad's civil war than have been killed in the wake of the invasion of Israel on the 7th. Just every 6 months or so, it has been the same. Just in Syria. Look at Yemen. They don't care about any of that. They care when the Jews defend themselves. Why? Because they can't bear it. It hurts their self-esteem. And one of the explanations that I mentioned in the book is that's because of the core of Islam. And let's just face up to it, for God's sake. The core of Islam is the belief that Islam is the final revelation from God. And if you believe you've got the final revelation from God, then things should be going well for you. You know, things should be going well. At the very least, they should be going better than the guys who rejected the revelation from God. And then when the guys who were among the first people to reject Muhammad's so-called revelation, among the first people who say, no, we're not accepting that, are still around and have a state that's doing well in a region that has very little going well. This is like the biggest hit, not just at the core of your self-esteem, this is a hit at the core of your religion. Why didn't our revelation bring loads of great stuff with it? Well, that's a painful question for Muslims to ask themselves. But, I mean, I refuse to not identify it, and it's so darn obvious, so darn obvious. You can predict with almost disappointingly 99% accuracy that even the child of Muslim immigrants into the West will be triggered by Israel to a multitude of times more than anything else that happens.
And you have a particular theory for this, which I find quite interesting. In the book, you told about the meeting, I think it was in late 1930s, early 1940s, between the Grand Mufti and Adolf Hitler.
Well, it's a matter of historical record that the Muslim world is the only part of the world where after World War II, a leader who participated in the Holocaust returned to his home a hero. After the end of World War II, the Nazi leaders in Europe were either hanged or slid away to South America like rats. And that's why I say, I mean, like on the right and broadly speaking on the left, after that there was a recognition that's bad. Don't do that again. But the Grand Mufti, who raised his own SS division, goes to Adolf Hitler to volunteer his help to get an SS division in the land of Israel, to get the Jews out of the region. He returns home, he returns back to Cairo, 1946, 1947, and is a hero. And I say in the book, I said, this is something people should know more about. That is one of the reasons why the bacillus, the virus of anti-Semitism, comes back to the Muslim world, a victor. And if this was any other part of society, we would say, I mean, right, left, Christian, whatever. But the fact that Muslim anti-Semitism is not being confronted is, to my mind, a great problem. And some people watching might think, well, why is it such a big problem? Why is, I'm not Jewish or, whatever. It's really one of the things you can tell with, again, in this case, 100% accuracy, is that anti-Semitism is the sign of a society going rotten. It is one of the things you do when everything else is going wrong. So it's not about Jews and Muslims. It's not about Jews and non-Jews. It's about the fact that if you understand that there are certain things that our species falls into, traps, we're not any more evolved than we were thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. They're just traps we fall into. This is one of the big traps. And if your society falls into it, it goes off the cliff if it tolerates it. And I suppose that's one of the many reasons I care. Why I've devoted so much time to this and so much energy and seen too much too up close for my liking. But this is why it matters.